Oh yeah, there we are.
Hello everyone, this is Kieran Keogh or CKTV on YouTube, and I'm tonight joined by Laura Lee Templeton. Welcome to the show, Laura Lee.
Well, hello, thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Great to have you on. You're linking up with us from San Francisco, California, is that right?
That is, well, just slightly north, but the greater San Francisco area, yes.
Very good, very good. And we have a big amount of topics to cover tonight on the show, and we're going to talk politics. We're going to talk about some of current world events, and some music as well. And might as well start off with the music, Laura. You're a big Horslips fan.
That I am. I think that's how we all met, right? Because I definitely started up the Facebook page for Horslips. That's huge. It's got something like 20,000 and strong fans on it now. I'm helped out with that by a couple of really excellent guys based in Ireland. Martin Kilbride, I think he's based in Waterford, and Bob Aiken, who's up in Belfast. And
okay.
Yeah. So we all manage the page together. They get a chance to go, as you know, Horslips, if the band proper isn't doing as many gigs as they were back in 2010, they certainly are popping up at related gigs like the band Troubled Pilgrims, which is the Radiators from Space. That's their new band. Johnny Thien does a lot of guest appearances. Sometimes you might catch him at a Pat McManus gig. Or at a sort of an event where he's playing with other fine musicians. So there's always something going on, and the Facebook page is one of the places to find it. And the band is great. I mean, I discovered them. It's funny, we were talking about the internet. I discovered them when I visited Ireland in 2002. I brought home a CD, and I went online, and I found I found one website, which was like a fan website, and then I found their website, but it was like, that was it. You know what I mean? Like, because 2002 feels like it was a long time ago now. And there was no YouTube, and there was no, Google Hangouts or Facebook. I mean, I don't even think Facebook had launched at that point. So
that's the way we can just link up. Such a clear, you can hear the voices so clear and everything, and
yeah,
it really is. It's great the way things have come on, really, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It really did. And I think Horslips is one of those bands. There's many bands that have had this renaissance. Like, I think here in America, I don't know. I mean, I could come up with anyway, I think what happened is that the internet made it possible for fans around the world to get together again around their favorite bands. And then these bands, some of them maybe hadn't gone on the road in a long time or whatever, but the fans kind of built the community back up, and they said, oh, well, let's do it. Let's go for it. Like, Jeff Lynne of ELO, which was one of my favorite bands in the 70s. He's just signed with Columbia Records, and he's got there's this huge online community around that band. So I think that there's a definite cause and effect going on there. And of course, then, like other new musicians, young musicians can use the internet and things like Facebook and, GarageBand and
Absolutely.
YouTube.
It's kind of the way to go now, isn't it? The internet, putting your stuff out there, like.
Yeah, you have to watch it though, and there's a lot of good writing on this. If you read Dave Byrne of the Talking Heads, or just like Google, the phrase free content, because the internet thrives on free content. Like, here's a video of our song. If people go online, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, there's a lot of bands that I know and love that I'll just go online and listen to their music, and maybe through like a Spotify kind of scenario or whatever. And it might not occur to me to buy the record. So if you're a young band and you're using the internet, you have to really map out your business plan so that you can pay for it. And I think the trick then becomes the live gigs. That's where you can, so you have to use the free content online to promote your community, your next gig, and then you have to make a lot of money at that gig.
Yeah, that's the business plan of it, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, so I'd say T-shirts and badges and you know, just guitar straps. You know, invest in some of that and sell them to the fans.
Yeah.
So
Any bands out there listening in, that's the advice from Laura there. She's big into this kind of stuff. So
I'm sure any band that's you know, people are learning that lesson right off the bat.
You're a great friend of my former colleague on Any Show on Live Radio, Marianne Ashcroft, and you would have been you're both like big followers of the Horslips, as well as a lot of great music from. You used to be friends when did you live in Ireland for a while, or what was the?
Oh no, see, that was I mean, what I was working in England a lot, and I would come over to Ireland on the weekends.
Right.
So that's where I started absorbing a lot of music and bands and things like that. But it's all the internet. The internet makes these things possible. You know, she would do her show at just the right time on Sundays. I think it was 6 p.m. Sundays, maybe.
Yeah.
So like,
wasn't that the name of
it?
Front Row Center.
Front Row Center, and so that's 10 a.m. Sunday my time. So it was just like a breeze to like be online and like get get the Horslips community going, or like, you know, chime in through. I forget how we hooked up. I think we just, you know, did it through Skype maybe, and she was able to record Skype onto the program right from there. So, you know, and I would go visit as often as I could. But not nearly as much as it maybe appeared. So like, it was all online, and that's the thing that's fun to do, is to have that you know, global connection with friends that are sharing a common interest, even if you're not in the common country. So
you have Scottish connections, is that right?
That I do, and again, it's because I met up with on MySpace. Remember MySpace?
That's right.
Yeah. There was like about 4 or 5 Horslips fans that I found on MySpace, and they were all from Scotland. And they're all from this little island in the Outer Hebrides. The band's called the Dunringles, their band, and they were like major prog rock fans. So they loved Horslips. They loved Jethro Tull. They loved you know, this band called Runrig, which I think is like the Scottish Horslips. They tell me. And they're really good, so these people, they had this whole like world of bands and, you know, culture and stuff, and it was all kind of inside jokes. You know, I at one point I finally figured it out. I'm like, they talk like they're in like 6 different bands, but it's the same 5 musicians. And so I think like 3 musicians will get up and play, and that's that band. And then the other 3 musicians will get up and play, and that's that band. And then they'll like switch it around, and they'll be, but they've done festivals, and they've you know, they do their home recordings, and they were releasing recordings on cassettes back in the 80s. And when the internet came along, they were like, yeah, this is perfect for us. And I think there's that kind of pursuing life in music too. They don't have any desire to hit the charts or make money or, you know, be famous. You know, it's all for this love of community, and that's a doable thing. And I think a little bit of that goes on with Marianne's work too, doesn't it? I mean,
absolutely. You know, yeah, I think it's all about passion, isn't it? Yeah,
it's a passion. Yes, good word.
It's the same with, you know, it's the same with YouTube. You know, me doing these videos on YouTube, it's purely about the passion of it, because, you know, I don't see a dime, you know what I mean?
No.
Well,
but you can put it on the resume, you know.
That's it. Well, it's all about the resume too, so that's.
Yeah, but I know it's yeah, you're giving up your Sunday evening, you know. You should be, you know, sleeping up.
Stuff you love chatting about, and you know, it's an opportunity to link up, so it's all good, you know.
Yeah. No, that's So the music and the internet. There's been a blessing and kind of a curse. You know, the curse being the free, making, you know, people file swapping and, you know, the things like that. But the blessing, I think, has been that the world exploded with all kinds of new bands and new sounds, and niche bands found their audience. This is an interesting story. This one guy, I don't even know him, but I just kind of stumbled across him, and I ended up buying his book. He's a black metal band, or he's in a black metal band down in Orlando, Florida. And I mean, you know, black metal, that's pretty raucous and you know, hardcore, right? But here's what he does. He is a vegan chef. So he writes black metal songs that are recipes on how to cook things like eggplant parmesan, or, you know, and he plays it, and he's like all in his full, you know, demonic makeup, and like in the videos he's chopping the vegetables with an axe, you know, and he's all offer it up to the gods, and you know, this sort of like over the top thing. And so he, you know, all of his friends were like, you should do a cookbook. So he sat down and said, I'll do a Kickstarter campaign for this cookbook. And he launches that. He had a goal for $30,000. He made $60,000 in pledges. So yeah, you know, just like through the roof, you know, and it's because people, you can't resist it. It's a black metal vegan chef. I mean, who doesn't want to buy that for somebody for Christmas?
It's a marketing boy, really, isn't it?
Hmm?
No, it's such a marketing, you know, marketing.
Yeah, it was all marketing. I mean, but he's having fun. So he was the best of both worlds there. The passion was there, and the market, and the savvy, and the internet. And he found a way to, you know, kind of get, you know, so he's where he's using the free content of his videos and some of the recipes that he gives away and everything. But now he's got a product that people are going to buy.
I mean, that's what it's all about, really, when you want to put out something, a product, you know, it's, a lot of it is to do with what have you got that's unique that other people don't have, you know? Yeah.
He's alone in the world of black metal vegan chefs, I'm going to guess.
But,
and I'm not even vegan, but I'm like, I'm sure those recipes would be great. So.
What would be your, like, top 3, top 5 bands of all time kind of thing?
Bored. My goodness. Top 5 bands of all time. Well, that shifts a lot depending on the mood that I'm in, because I'm really into jazz right now. But back in the world of rock and roll, I'm gonna say, for me, I have to give credit where it's due. I think the Rolling Stones definitely, you know, carved out a whole world of you know, the long-term blues English band, you know, whatever, and they did that in the face of the Beatles at first, which must have been really amazing. And they're still with us, and you know, they look like ancient, but there's the Rolling Stones.
They look like a Skeletor from the He-Man movie, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They do. Or like, I mean, when they had Keith Richards in playing the pirate zombie in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, we're like, of course, you know. And anyways, but I think
Johnny Depp's character, like, I think Johnny Depp based his character on Keith Richards, so it was kind of fitting.
That's right. I think you're right. Yes, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. So they kind of get up there with me. Of course, I'm going to have to kind of pledge allegiance to Horselips, for which it stands. You know, and then you know, there's a voice in my head going, Bob Dylan, you got to say Bob Dylan. But yeah,
Bob Dylan definitely would be up there with anybody, I think, really.
Would be. I think, but I'm looking for like the band where it's like they define a sound, they own that sound, and there's many imitators and creative kind of spirit around it, or that they define an era. And I think Fleetwood Mac is kind of there for me, you know, in all of its manifestations. It's early English blues, it's California pop, it's, you know, Stevie Nicks getting all crazy on us, you know, and
they have a very kind of addictive sound to them, you know. They're very addictive type of music, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that, and then I think, but lately, there's been this great disco renaissance, which has made you kind of appreciate some of the real greats of say the R&B sound, and you know, like I think that I'm trying to narrow it down. It's so hard. I'm just like hearing so many different songs in my head. But you know, just think of like not the Bee Gees, but and not Casey and the Sunshine Band, but just, you know, like Earth, Wind and Fire. You know, I hate to say they're the greatest band, but by golly, you put on an Earth, Wind and Fire record and you're like, holy crap, this stuff is fantastic. Yeah. And it really holds up over time. So, you know, but anyway, let's just say
too much. There's too many great bands out there, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of great bands. Yeah. Yeah. and then there's a lot of great new bands. I like Bruno Mars. I think he's got some good.
Mars is unbelievable, isn't he?
Yeah, he's fantastic. And you know,
I
so
think
the
he's got that Michael Jackson style to him, doesn't he?
Pardon?
He's really like Michael Jackson. You know, there's so many similarities there.
Yeah, he definitely has studied his influences quite a bit. Who else do I like? There's a band called Mowgli's. They're very influenced by the Beatles and Yellow. You maybe haven't heard them over there yet, but I think they're pretty good. In the female singer-songwriter, I'm going to say I listen to Taylor Swift. I'm not ashamed of that.
She's very up with the younger ones, isn't she? She's got a big...
Yes. But there's, you know, if you know your pop music, and maybe this is, I guess, what anybody as they get older, they like to say how pop music's gotten worse. Like kids today, what are they listening to? You know, my music, mine was the best music, you know, and people have been saying that, I think, ever since there's been recorded music, probably even before that. I'm sure, like, you know, Beethoven's generation was like getting an earful from Mozart's generation, and they were getting an earful from Bach's generation, you know, like, oh, your music sucks. But if you really know and love music, and you go and you listen to what the music's being put out for a younger audience, and you tell yourself, now let me put that side by side, let me take that Taylor Swift single there and put it side by side with Olivia Newton-John at her best, you gotta have to own up, all right, she's good. She is good at doing what this genre needs done. And it's, you know, it's bright and it's poppy and it has energy in it, and it sort of reflects what the kids want to hear, you know, like what younger people want to hear stuff like. When I say younger people, I really am thinking of like the 8 and 9-year-olds, like really younger people. So
remember that band, what were they called? Hanson?
Oh yeah, I remember them.
They were big in 96, 97, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. And now, yeah, just today I was watching one of the news channels, or not news channels, there's a channel doing a Monkeys marathon of all the old Monkeys episodes.
All right, yeah, I love them.
There you go, Last Train to Clarksville, you know, all of that. And that is just pure pop music. So anybody that like gets, you know, that has that in their life and then gets all like up on, oh, you know, Taylor Swift or whatever, they're kind of like forgetting how they themselves enjoyed that kind of music at one point. So
I'd be a big Elvis Presley guy myself, you know, I'd be into that kind of stuff. But
that's right, you did the Elvis imitation that one time.
Yeah, I used to do some, and I do it sometimes, but they used to call his music at the start when he started out, they used to bubblegum pop, was it?
Yeah. With Elvis?
Yeah.
I love you, teddy bear. That kind of thing? I'll put a ring around my neck and take me anywhere. Oh, let me be. Oh, let him be.
From the King, wasn't it? Some great tunes from the King of Rock and Roll.
Oh, yeah. No, that's it's now or never. Come hold me tight, kiss me, my darling. Yep, that's all there. And see, look, how is that any different from haters gonna hate, you know?
Yeah, but yeah, definitely a legend of all time, I think. I don't think anybody has been much better.
Oh, we'll see now if you let me expand my genre to like the all-time greats. I think we got, you know, you got him, you got B.B. King, you've got Muddy Waters, you got some good R&B stuff way back there, you know. So, and Chuck Berry for the guitar work, although, you know, it's tough. A lot of these older ones, and like, you know, it's tough when they do something that kind of fouls up their, you know, their legacy. Like, who's the one we've just lost now? No, I forget. Well, I mean, Bill Cosby, but he's not a musician. I mean, you know, when something comes out where you go, oh man, now I won't be able to enjoy the art as much.
Yeah. There's been a lot of stuff on the news that's come out as far as people and the different accusations to them, and you kind of feel then that they're not as big a deal in your mind then sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can make a choice to not let that get in the way of the art, you know, and I think, but there's sometimes it can be really hard. I mean, And anyway, so with that's a lot on music. I didn't think we'd be, we got a presidential election to cover, my friend.
Yeah, we're going to cover some more stuff. So the next thing I think we should cover and touch on a bit more briefly is the state that you live in, California.
Oh
You
yeah.
were thinking about there's terrible wildfires up north there. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, yes. And of course that ties in with the drought. We've had a very hot summer in this part of the Northern California. Northern California and Southern California are kind of two different regions. There's a lot of different regions, but when you think of like a really hot, dry desert summer, that should be happening down south. But it's starting to happen up here as well. So a lot, and we've had a drought. We're in our fourth year of sort of a gradually worsening drought. And so people, are being good and they're not watering as much as they used to, and things like this. So when a fire gets started, it's obviously got nothing but dry grass and dead wood, and just it's like it's almost inevitable that there's going to be these wildfires because the ground and everything is so dry. And so I guess as of this morning, they're starting to evacuate Lakeville County, which is about 2 counties north of us. And a lot of my friends in Petaluma are getting involved in like rounding up some bedding and, supplies and food, and how it's going to be. It's going to be like people are going to be out of their homes for a while. And
you were saying it's kind of like a mini immigrant crisis that we're having in Europe. It's kind of like a mini one of them in California.
One of them, yeah. I mean, I can see how it's only comparable in that there are always going to be these catastrophes that drive people out of their homes. I mean, there could be a natural disaster like an earthquake or a fire, which is what's happening now. And of course, then it's different because with an earthquake and a fire, there's always the understanding of, well, these people are coming down temporarily. Obviously, they're going to really want to go back and rebuild their homes. And with the immigrant crisis that you have, the uncertainty comes from, well, Syria is obviously in the middle of a ferocious war. I mean, if it's a war bad enough to have this many people wanting to just get out of it, it's got to be. And I know I've been trying to read. I really was trying to read everything I could in advance of this. But I know that ISIS is involved in this war, and Kurdish, smaller groups. So it's not a very clear war, and it's a civil war, which is always the most uncertain kind of war to have, because
rumors, there's a lot of propaganda being put out there too by the mainstream media, which doesn't help matters either,
No, and that was the other thing. It's like, so these people from from Lakeville coming down to here, it's like we know who they are. They're just other Californians, or even if they had to come from Nevada, or even if they had to come from Canada. But what you have with this situation that's happening in Europe is, I think there's a fear of there's not a comfort level with the people, because they are of a different faith, or they're of a different ethnicity, and that just plays right into the hands of the people who might want to say things.
Absolutely, yeah. And with Germany, that Germany has said they're taking in 800,000 this year, and then 500,000 every year after. You got to think that's going to affect German society in years to come. You're looking at maybe somebody says that Germany would be 25% Muslim in 10 years' time. It's scary.
Yeah, not in
the sense that you're against Muslims, but in a sense that it'll totally change up the society.
And I did think a lot about that, because I thought about, I was going to tell you that when I was young, I watched America as we had to accept the Vietnamese migration of refugees that came out of, there were 2 waves of them, bizarrely enough, but the one that happened after the fall of Saigon, where it was Vietnamese that had been partners with the United States, who obviously would have been slaughtered by the North Vietnamese, as a result of the victory that they had. So we had kind of a responsibility to these people. They were our colleagues, they were families that wanted to get out, they just didn't want to stay. So a lot of them came to Southern California. And I went, and we had a family. A friend of mine actually had a friend who was one of the families that had escaped. And so we visited them in the refugee camps, I want to say about 3 times. And then they got an apartment. And then, a couple of years later, they bought a house. And the next year, like the kids going off to an American college. And they just assimilated into American society.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would say, if you ask me, so bizarre, but if you'd say, okay, what was the net result of the Vietnamese refugee situation of the mid-70s that you now are personally aware of? I would say, well, it sure is true that just about every city you go to has a Vietnamese restaurant now. You know what I mean? That's all it did to our society, is it just sort of increased the number of people who were Vietnamese that then have, there's a few more Buddhist temples, that's for sure. But this may kind of come back to, like, America's a huge country. There's places, like, we just drove through the valley, Central Valley. Oh my gosh, it was like nobody was there, And so it seems like we could absorb a lot, and we're built on that. That was our philosophy. We were the country built by immigrants. Whereas I think a country like Germany, they're doing an admirable job, and they've definitely stepped up to the plate. And so is Turkey too. There's a great article about some of the camps in Turkey. And I'm sorry, I'm talking. I should let you talk.
No, it's okay. It's a fascinating situation, and it's a situation like you were saying about the Buddhists coming into America, and with the Vietnamese War and that, and the aftermath of it with the Buddhists coming in. But the Buddhists are very peaceful people. They're such a peaceful race, as compared to the Islamic race, which are kind of, a lot of them, not all of them, probably 90% are great, but 5 or 10% of them are pretty extreme, and that's what you were worried about. That's all I'm saying about that,
Well, I can see where the media has definitely given you a lot to think about in that area. Like the one article you posted where it was saying, the ISIS is going to use this as a doorway into the thing. And certainly, I think any of us would be very flippant to disregard what happened in France earlier this year,
right.
with the shootings. But this is where, if you really, really want to be, kind of part of a better world, take the time to, look at that piece of media and say, who published it?
Yeah.
And who are they quoting? I mean, do they have a real source here? And also, I mean, just to say, ISIS loses nothing by saying that if they said that, even if they're not doing it, right? Because what do they? All they have to do is sow the fear. So and they don't even have to send one person over. And then the other danger, I think, or what may have happened, or what can happen, I think, particularly it did in France, is that the generation fleeing, the immigrants coming, they're going to be grateful to have a country that welcomes them in, and they're going to be fine.
That way, yeah, true.
But if they're second or third generation of that community, should they stay for a second or third generation, if there's lingering discrimination or resentment, that generation will be what I would say, they could be recruited into something. Because what I mean? They're going to feel resentful that they didn't get the rights of the country that they're supposedly a member of. Just a thought. But and this is why I took the interview, because I thought we've all got to do a little bit of thinking about this,
It's true, yeah. It's actually, it's something, if you look into it too much, you kind of get too kind of uptight about it. But I think I've tried to tell myself now, just try and take it as it comes. But I think Ireland, I'm kind of, because I look at the bigger picture and I like to look at what's happening in other places as well as here. And then if I just looked at here with a lot of people, I wouldn't take it on board too much. But it's because you're interested in stuff, it's resonates with you.
It's definitely, I mean, you gotta think about it all. And I mean, regardless of who they are, just think about somebody's been tasked with, and this is what I was going to say, this article about Turkey. Can you imagine what it's like to build and maintain a refugee camp? Like you've got, it's like an instant city, and you've got to like make sure it's got the infrastructure and the food and the, ensure the peace and the safety of everybody.
Yeah.
That's a huge challenge.
It is.
So, and I know there's some of the chatter is like, well, why is my country doing all this work when, maybe they could be doing it for our own people? Yeah. And I would say, well, why aren't they doing it for your own people? That might have been a question to have for earlier on.
Yeah. Well, I know that there is a lot of that's felt in Ireland. I heard numbers like we have 3,000 or 5,000 that are, homeless in Dublin, and they bring in these 5,000 immigrants to Ireland now, and it's like they're going to look after them before they look after the homeless, which is it doesn't really make sense. But then in other ways, they've argued the people that are justifying this have argued that
Yeah, it's as if the public opinion accepted the homeless up until this moment of crisis, kind of woke them up to it. So it's sort of like, that's on everybody, right? You should have been saying, hey, let's do something about the homeless, all the time. I don't know. It's tough. But there are people that do.
Hard to know what way to go sometimes with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was pretty, that was pretty hard hitting, I think. And again, I should say for, the viewers, my opinion not represent that of all of America.
Yeah, this is strictly just what me and Laura are talking about tonight. Anyone that's watching here, folks, it's all about just our perspective on it and the way we look at these things, and just speculating on the way things are going, and it's nothing, we're not taking any sides or anything like that, But we maybe talk a bit about just, we recently it was the 9/11 this year, and everybody looks back at the tragedy of was it 14 years ago now?
I know, it's 14, yeah, and I think the longer it gets, that has this other weird effect of, like, this year I didn't spend as much time thinking about 9/11 as much as I spent thinking about all the people that I've lost since then for just ordinary reasons, like the passage of time, so to speak. And but I know that there was one woman, her daughter's preschool, they had a memorial to 9/11, and she was like, geez, I wasn't gonna tell her about 9/11 until she was at least 8 years old. So I mean, we already have people that are that have no living memory of it, but we do. So that's where we're at now. We have to start saying, how do we fold this into, the way that Pearl Harbor, right? Pearl Harbor is a part of our history. We need to understand how it caused World War, how it got America into World War II. And we had 50-year celebrations of that were very conciliatory, where we just honored the lives of the people lost. Mm-hmm. So with 9/11, there's just so much there. And again, I tried to read up a lot of this, but I think the one story I liked this year was the dog. There was a rescue dog at 9/11, one of many, of course. And this year, some people, I guess, the dog's now retired because they don't have nearly as long of a life in service as other people. And so they just honored the dog, as in that, not on the day of 9/11, but I guess the dog had a birthday recently, so they had a birthday party for the dog. And that's kind of sweet. And I know there was a lot of there's another thing now where you're supposed to do a day of service on 9/11, go out and try to volunteer and be part of the community, maybe honor somebody like a firefighter or a police officer, or think about, the people that had to, the rescue workers, things like that. So that was kind of the tone of it this year. I didn't, it's not going to be a political cat football, I don't think, for the next round of presidents.
Doing ways, moving on anyway, I think it's better to just move on about this anyway. We'll maybe talk a bit about maybe give your opinions on while we're talking about 9/11, maybe give your opinions on the Bush administration back then. What do you think?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I will tell you. I mean, now I have to tell you about what did happen on this current 9/11. My local rock radio station, they were like playing snippets from back in the day. And they
Right.
played one snippet of Bush talking about how one of the first orders that he had to do on that day was to tell the U.S. Air Force to shoot down any plane that didn't respond.
Right.
You might, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I remember it all, like, because I was on the radio, I was on the internet. But,
Yeah.
there was, when the attacks hit, there was obviously a sky full of planes, and we had no idea how many more might be involved in this thing. So the orders were bring them down. If they don't respond, shoot them down. And that's a pretty scary order to have to give. And so Bush said, so when, Flight 93 was, came down in Philadelphia, and that's the one that was on its way to the Pentagon, that the story is, and I believe it, that the passengers overtook the people on the hijackers and brought the plane down.
Yeah.
I think that, so Bush said, he said, when I first heard about, Flight 93 coming down, I wondered if we had done, if that was because of my orders, because I had to give this rather terrible order, and that flight didn't respond, that, we shot them down. And my husband and I said, because we heard this little snippet, we'd never heard it before. And I was like, I thought I had, and it'd been so long since anybody had talked about the fact that, yeah, we had to give the order to shoot down the planes if they hadn't responded. I said, I thought I had misremembered that had happened, but I remembered it on that day. And then we also said for Bush, he seemed to have a lot of anguish in his voice. Like we felt in this little interview that he did have human feelings about the day, and he had kind of an overwhelming sense of responsibility, which he needs to have because he's the leader, so he better have that responsibility.
Absolutely.
And that maybe he felt a little bit of pain, beyond just what a politician has to do, which is get out there and stuff. Now, having said all that, it was great to have a connection to know that there was a real person behind, the president. But obviously, I think anybody would have to say going to war with Iraq was clearly the wrong move. I mean, it was just, hands down, that was not appropriate.
As an American citizen and somebody that has lived there your whole life and that, do you think that the whole idea of the CIA being behind the whole thing was just a load of bull, or do you think there's something to that?
Oh, that's another one that there was chatter. But not, I mean, there's that same discussion about Pearl Harbor, by the way.
Right.
We're like, why did we leave all of our aging ships there in that harbor that we hardly ever use, and practically give Japan a map to it? Yeah. Because, Roosevelt was facing a very isolationist nation that didn't want to go to war. And, and you remember, like, Germany attacked England in 1939, and America was just sitting over here going, oh, wow, okay. And we had done that in World War I, too. Like, we're just, I don't know. And then finally got our, selves over there.
You know that, the biggest money makers are the weaponry and the wars, you know what I mean? And the oil and everything.
Not going to deny that.
Make money, you know what I mean? So
yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, World War II and or 9/11. Well, and particularly with 9/11, what we had, I always put the two things in context of the day that the Berlin Wall came down, which was effectively the end of the Cold War, and everybody's like, "Hooray, that's great!" I always say that was the beginning of 9/11 because it's like we just sort of wandered through the 90s. And after having, World War II and then the Cold War, it's like we had built a military industrial industry. And it had nothing to do in the 90s. It was like sitting there going, I know, I think it had in fact, it did start to have things to do because that was some of the attacks on some of the pipelines and early stuff. But I mean, I don't want to go as far as to say conspiracy or plan or whatever, but there are definitely people that do better financially in times of war.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think it makes sense. But I'm not saying that war is a terrible thing, but it does make sense for the people that are in charge of the money, I suppose, to
Yeah. And so these people are not going to be very good at creating peace. And so that's.
And going from there to the Obama administration, what's your thoughts on that? And what was your thoughts at the time he was elected?
Oh, we were all very happy when he was elected, of course,
Yeah.
because who could have thought, right?
And it was a very historical moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I actually worked the polls. I kind of had this thought of, and I've got like a little pin where I get to be a poll worker. So I spent the whole day, helping people vote, and I'd done that before. But like on an off election, when you're just voting on like, Proposition E to pass money to buy chlorine for the community pool, like 4 voters show up, right? Yeah. Or like Proposition D for the schools, and it's like, okay, that maybe gets 10 votes, 10 voters showing up. But for the day that Obama was elected, it was like the line was there waiting for us, and it stayed there all day, and we're just like whipping people through. And of course, they heightened thing about, oh, well, you better not have voter fraud. So, they kind of trained us on all this stuff. But it was just lots of fun. And the other bonus, and I don't know if this happens in Ireland, but when you're inside and you're working the polls, you can't watch the news. You can't talk about the news. You can't read a newspaper. So it's like a media-free zone. Yeah, so it was great. I didn't have to hear Fox News all day long. But then of course, obviously once he was elected, like anybody, he's going to have to overcome, there's just challenges. And I know he's made some judgment calls that people a lot have been very critical of. And like the drone strikes, in which, he's sort of helped reduce the amount of people in the Middle East, in the military situation. But it has not reduced what I think would be the outcome of war, which is people are still dying. So
that's true. Yeah. What about this? It's in the news this last couple of days, the whole Iran deal that he struck up with Iran and Israel.
Yeah. I don't know the ins and outs on that one, but I have a really politically savvy friend who said, well, that's another good thing he did. Like
a lot of people saying
only got one good thing, but this is another good one.
There's a few people saying that it is a bad deal, but then it's hard. I'm just looking at it from an outsider's point of view.
Yeah. I apologize. You should have told me I'm going to talk about the Iran deal, and then I would have read up on that.
Just came to me before the show.
I just think, wow, in 1979, Iran was our enemy, and now we're able to talk with them, and that's the beauty of progress in politics. Is that you can, if you find some voice of reason within somewhere inside there is somebody you can work with. So
that's true. Well, I think we've fairly covered. I'm kind of stuck for words here. I think we've more or less covered the lineup we had to talk about tonight. But
good.
I would love to have you on again at sometime in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, I think you had a pretty ambitious. I thought you would ask me about Donald Trump, but okay.
Yeah, actually, sorry. We can cover that. Are you rushing for time, or I'm quite happy?
Well, let's maybe like because first of all, Donald Trump's going to be with us a while, so another show could definitely happen. Yeah, we talked about Bush, we talked about Obama, and those are all great, but obviously America's now like eyes on the prize with 2016, and it just is filled with surprises. With Donald Trump being there, I encourage you to, like I said, watch Donald Trump and Jimmy Fallon if you can find that. I just saw that on YouTube. He's going to be on Stephen Colbert, and by the way, just so everybody can kind of. They're probably saying, why is she talking about Donald Trump? Well, why indeed? I mean, it's amazing to me that, love him or hate him, the man has successfully captured the attention of everything and kind of breaking all of these rules. And some people are now saying, oh, he's just entertainment. Other people are saying he's dangerous. And other people are saying, oh, he's just kind of filling the time until we get down to the serious side of things. And on the flip side, we have Bernie Sanders, who
Yeah.
a lot of people
There's
talk.
another guy who isn't afraid to speak his mind and tell people what he thinks.
Exactly, exactly. And what's really interesting now is that because of what just happened in England with the Labour Party,
Yeah, big
you
one
know,
for what's that
um,
guy's name again?
Jeremy Corbyn, I think, right?
Corbyn. Yeah, he seems
Yeah.
to be a guy, a no nonsense guy as well. That I think he'll be a lot better than Cameron.
Oh my God. Well, that's setting the bar pretty.
That's true.
I would be better than Cameron. Let me tell you, you would be better than Cameron, but not to the bankers. That's why Cameron's there. He is, of course, very much good to the financial community. Not that I'm biased, but anyway, this Corbyn guy, you know, like you look at him and you'd go, oh man, here comes another lefty dreamer. You know, he's going to be, you know, he's going to get up there and say his silly things, and then we're never going to hear from him again. And now he's leader of the Labour Party. So it's like, so everybody in America was like, Bernie, you know, like right over to you, Bernie Sanders. You know, like I think Bernie Sanders just like went up in the odds quite a bit as a result of Jeremy Corbyn. You know.
What's your thoughts on Ron Paul?
Oh, Ron Paul. Okay, he's an interesting one. Well, the libertarian point of view is always very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because I think it's slightly different than the sort of the evangelical conservatives that really, you know, kind of get you upset.
Right.
So Ron Paul, he says interesting things. He's a lot like, you know, the people that say the things that are just slightly off the script are always more interesting than the ones that are, you know, like.
Absolutely,
You know,
I would totally agree with that.
you know. And so I, you know, I'll pay attention to him. And his son Rand Paul is the one I think who's running, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, and of course, you know, any one of these people, when we start to get down to policy, which might be the next discussion, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, right now it's just there's too many of them. It's like I don't even know what to compare it to. Like, you know, it's
the Brady Bunch of
very
politics.
early on in the game. Yeah. So let's wait till we get.
I was going to say something there, actually. I was going to say, Hillary Clinton, do you think she has burned her bridges as far as the email scandal?
She's encountered a few challenges now.
Yeah.
I mean, she was doing fairly well, and then you know, the approach to the email scandal was a little bit, and this is what's so unfair. I mean, like look at unfair in a sort of delightful, entertaining way. You know, look at Donald Trump. He gets to get up there and completely insult a female reporter on Fox News. Right? Like insult her, you know, every which way possible. And, you know, the next day people were like, wow, that was amazing what he did, you know, and the poll numbers rise. Mitt Romney didn't even insult women. He just said something kind of insensitive about women, and it pretty much tanked his thing. Poor Hillary Clinton, she just like makes a joke about her email things. Everybody's like all over her, you know, like, ooh, you know, Hillary, you should have said that about your email thing. And, you know.
Do you think that may be a sexist thing against Hillary, or do you think it's to do with.
Well, no, except for the fact that you know, you see it also happen to people like Mitt Romney. I think with all of them, it's like, I think people just are hating on the professional politicians.
Right.
They're not liking the politician that feels very calculated or very insincere, or, you know, and that was Hillary and that was Romney. Or it is, you know, I mean, Hillary, I actually saw her speak live. I thought she was fine. I thought, you know, and she has a way of saying everything I want to hear. But then somebody would say, well, that's because she took a poll before she got up and talked to you.
But can't she be trusted is the other question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's so many of these politicians that they say stuff, but can they be trusted either?
Right, right. And that's whereas you do get the feeling Donald Trump really would live up to any piece of, you know, I mean, you
I don't think, I think if Donald Trump was in office, I don't think he would listen to the higher ups that tell him what way to do things, you know, whereas a lot of these people are talking from a script.
They would, yeah. No, I know. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump would be good as president. I don't.
You know?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, well, I mean, but I think he's shaking it up in a way that's very interesting. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Like, on the one hand, I'm like, whatever. But on the other hand,
good for the preliminaries, because this is just the start of the primaries and that. And I think once it gets into the nitty gritty, then in the next part of it, you might see a few people get dropped out, and who knows? It might be between him, Hillary, Sanders, and Ron Paul, and maybe one or two
that'll
others.
be an interesting race. Yeah, we've already lost Rick Perry, of the governor of Texas. He's already out.
And Jeb Bush as well. We forgot about Bush.
The what?
We forgot about Jeb Bush as well. He's the
I know, poor Jeb Bush. He was like he was on Stephen Colbert's show, his very first show. Okay, like and this major thing, Stephen Colbert, when he came back, and Jeb Bush, and I watched the interview twice, and I'm like, yeah, I am just not feeling anything there. You know what I mean? Like, he said all the right things.
Yeah.
And even the audience was kind of like, you know, like sort of clapping, but not really clapping. I'm like, you've got to liven up. So, you know, it's tough. We'll see.
Overall, what do you think? How do you think it'll work out?
Well, gosh, it could be between Bernie Sanders and a really, you know, out there Republican, and we'll see how it goes. And if it's between those two, I think Bernie might have a chance. Who knows?
Well, Laura Lee, it's been great having you on the KEOSTER Live tonight on CKTV and YouTube.
Yeah, well, it was great to be here, and maybe a few months from now we can come back and check in on that presidential race.
That'd be cool. Yeah, it'd be brilliant to have you back online. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. When you do get to join us live, thank yous. And Laura Lee, great to have you, and we'll chat again soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Laura, KEOSTER over and out.